There are several examples of rich people advocating against wealth inequality. The gap between rich and poor is ever widening, and that is a huge problem basically. But anyone with common sense should understand that it's not inequality which is the problem. Poverty is the problem. You can very much have a roof above your head, food, running water and electricity, while at the same time have little to no disposable income. If you are struggling to meet and uphold these basic necessities month by month, then you are indeed poor, at the very least by first world standards. For some, this kind of bare minimum lifestyle is enough, whereas for others who want more out of life, it can be extremely taxing on their mental health. In other words, it may not be a case of poverty regarding basic human necessities. It could be a case of poverty of mind. At that point, one will think your mind is then occupied by the goal of escaping poverty, with nothing else getting in the way of that goal. Not even the fact that some people were simply born richer and luckier than you. However, it is an unfortunate reality that many people lose hope in escaping poverty when they look at people being born lucky, believing that to be a decisive factor to reach even the slightest bit of happiness. That poor state of mind often leads to the saddest and most pathetic of the 7 deadly sins: envy. How ironic is it then that, despite putting in the hard work, going against all odds, being living proof of the world's endless possibilities, your mind is still shackled by this poor thinking, acting as though your success was due to sheer luck in the end, just like everyone else who is filthy rich. Perhaps not fully accurate to my description just now, but Gary Stevenson is such a rich individual. Now comes the question, assuming you didn't read the title of this video. Does Gary practice what he preaches?
I want to start with you, Gary. It's an incredible book. It's sold buckets of copies. #1 with the paperback. On the front it says, an unforgettable story of greed, financial madness, and moral decay. Now, you went from a council estate, working class council estate in Ilford in Essex, sort of east of London for Americans. You rose to become Citibank's most profitable trader in the world, but you grew increasingly disgusted by what you saw as the blatant inequality of the system that you were gaming. You had a breakdown, and then you quit, and you're now an avid anti-inequality campaigner. You think there are fundamental changes required in the system, centered around redistribution of wealth and resource, or the whole thing will collapse. So, starting with you, how much did that resonate with you, what Bill Burr was saying?
Well, I come from a poor background. I come from a poor background in East London. My friends and my family still live in that background. So, these stories of mum skipping meals so the kids can eat, people not being able to put the heating on in the winter, that's common. That's really, really, and I think it's important that we say that in spaces like these, because now I exist in these media spaces, and I've been to these fancy universities, I've worked in the banks. A lot of wealthy people don't see that's happening. In this country, I'm talking to you right now, half the country struggles to simultaneously feed the kids and turn the heating on. That's the truth, and I know it's getting that way in America as well, so of course it resonates with me, Of course it resonates with me. The poverty is out of control.
Jump to the part that I agree with, which is that of course there is inequality, and would we all like to see poor people have more? And is it possible that some people have quote unquote too much? It's hard to agree what that might be, but I'm sympathetic to that argument for sure. And that's in my country, and that's across the pond right here. That's #1.
I was a trader for a long time, and I worked with a much older trader. In the book, he's called JB. He had a good quote about these kinds of opinions. He said, opinions are like arseholes. Everybody's got one. Now listen, I don't get paid to have opinions, okay? I was one of the best paid and most successful traders in the world, for one of the biggest banks in the world. I put bets, I place bets. And I've been betting for 14 years that the working class in my country and the working class in your country will collapse into desperate, worsening poverty year after year. I'm a multi-millionaire from doing that, from betting on that. Traders message me every day. They say what's going to happen. I say it's going to get worse. I've been betting on it since the beginning of COVID. I've made millions on it. All the best traders know. Let me explain to you how economics works, all right? You guys work in media, all right? I work for Citibank. You call up Citibank and you say, I want an opinion on what's going to happen to the economy. They pay me £2 million a year. Do they give me the phone? No, they don't. Kids like me don't get the phone. We get the money, okay? I shouldn't be here. Doesn't make no sense for me to have a YouTube channel. Doesn't make no sense for me to be here.
Well, far as I'm concerned, considering you became a millionaire quite a while ago, I don't see why you can't just quit what you're currently doing and invest in something different. Something you actually want. Like, you can act guilty and ashamed all you want, but if you keep doing what you're doing, despite having the money to pack it up and leave for something else, let's just say actions speak louder than words once again.
Every single year, up until 2020, they said rates will recover next year, until 2020 when they finally said rates will stay zero forever. We're bad at this. We're bad at this, okay? I'm fucking good at this, all right? Why did interest rates not recover after 2008? Because people weren't spending money. Zero interest rates are supposed to get people spending. Why did zero interest rates not get people spending? I had the radical idea of going out and asking people, what do you think people say when I ask them, why aren't you spending more money? What do you think people say?
They're not spending more money because they probably don't have more money.
Yeah, and when I looked at their financial situations, what I saw, this is in early 2010s, I was in my mid-20s, I saw a generation of people, my parents' generation, who owned property, and another generation of people, their kids, my generation, who will never own property. The middle class are losing their homes, the middle class are losing their wealth. Where is that wealth going? Where is that wealth
And your
going?
argument is it's going just to the super rich.
Where else?
So they're getting...
Which also begs the question, despite the fact, how did Gary manage to become a multimillionaire? We may have an explanation, which I will later show.
But this type of class warfare that we've been caught up in, where the common phrase always is, well, they have to pay their fair share. Well, who decides what the fair share is? And guess what? Someone will always want more of your money.
Gary?
Listen, I don't like opinions. I'm not really interested in opinions. I make predictions. What you've said you want is what you're going to get, right? Because this is the policy of the new government. Do you think living standards for your average working class American are going to improve?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, that's good. Put this on YouTube. Nobody did the analysis. I did the analysis.
Can you point, if you know your history, can you point to a period in UK history, for example, where massively punishing rich people by massively taxing them has actually benefited the country?
Listen,
Because I can't really.
My dad was born in 57. He worked for the post office, Royal Mail, 35 years. Never once earned more than the average wage in the country. He was able to buy a house, support a family. My parents are retired now. They own their own property. They're financially secure. That's not possible now. He lived in an era where the top rate of tax was much, much, much higher. The 50s, the 60s, the 70s in the UK, in the US, the top rate of tax on large estates was significantly higher. And in that time period, it's not a coincidence, ordinary people could afford to buy houses. They could afford to, listen, this is not normal, okay? Read your history, right? You read Charles Dickens? Charles Dickens? In this country we're talking in right now, 150 years ago, ordinary men and women lived in desperate poverty, okay? That's gonna happen again. That is what, it's not normal.
Hold on, but making the argument that 40 or 50 years ago the tax rates were higher and somehow that made things better. First off, times change.
Indeed, times change. All those years ago, Great Britain and Europe weren't overwhelmed by uncontrolled illegal mass immigration. Definitely not to today's level. And somebody has to pay for their illegal stay in our countries, you know?
You don't need me, somebody who's made millions of pounds betting on this. The clearest proof you will ever need of the absolutely bloody obvious fact that if you massively increase inequality, you will decrease living standards for working people.
Well, it seems to me that the part we're agreeing on is that we all seem to agree that giant government spending and giant government control over the economy and over our lives ultimately is bad. I don't blame...
Yeah, I don't really see the correlation between that reality, which we can all agree to, and the fact that it's the billionaires' fault for getting richer.
Exactly.
When actually a lot of that wealth was just accrued from...
Listen, I'm not Mahatma Gandhi, I'm not Mother Teresa, I'm not a moral philosopher. I'm one of the best economists in the fucking world at this, okay? I'm here to tell you what's happening. If you massively increase inequality, these guys, they don't just sit on that $10 trillion. They don't just sit on it. They use that to buy assets. They buy the assets that ordinary American working families need. The reason why American families, their kids can't afford homes is because they're now competing with a billionaire class that is $10 trillion richer. $10 trillion, that's $40,000 for every American man, woman,
What do you say to that?
Well, I would say that...
Yeah, what you want to change is the system.
Yeah, look, I'm not here to blame nobody. Listen, I'm a rich person. You're a rich person. I just met you today, but you've got a very nice suit.
I'm
I
doing
see
all
you're
right.
doing all
It is a
right.
new suit. It is a new
Listen,
suit.
I'll tell you what a competent government would do. A competent government would stop this massive, massive increase of inequality from accelerating out of all control.
How would
Because
you do,
these
how
are-
would you do
So
it?
do you agree with
It's-
Donald Trump's policies on that? Because by lowering taxes, by lowering regulation,
Listen, okay,
by
all right.
getting rid of inefficiency, I mean, I'm with you
How
on the
rich is Elon
premise.
Musk?
I'm with you
How
on
rich is
the-
Elon Musk?
He's worth trillions, I don't know.
Okay, let's say he's worth $300 billion. Okay, what is his passive income going to be on $300 billion?
I understand. So you want him to
$15
be
billion
taxed
a year.
more.
$15 billion a year. Okay, what's $15 billion a year per week? We're talking about something like $300 million a week.
But what's your
okay?
point?
These guys have no choice but to buy up the assets. These guys will buy up all of the assets. If you allow these people to be extraordinarily rich, they're not bad people. Well, in some cases they might be, but I don't know these guys, right? They will
Let
buy
me
up all
count
the
it.
assets.
Let
And
me count-
ordinary people
let me
will
Gary, let me
own
count
nothing.
you. Let's take Musk. It's a good example, actually, because he's somebody who's created 5 companies now, or part created some of them and created others from scratch. And they're some of the most extraordinary companies in the world. Tesla is the #1 green energy car company in the Western world. And it's where people want to take cars because it doesn't gas guzzle the way that the conventional petrol cars do. You've got Neuralink, which is trying to help paraplegic people be able to communicate. You've got Starlink, which is part of his SpaceX thing, which is an extraordinary development. It's been used in war zones and disaster zones to save lives. You've got his taking over of X, which may not seem as important, but actually restoring genuine balance of free speech to let conservatives have a voice, I think has been really important to democratic discourse in America in particular. And he's got other things that he's done. And you put it all together and you think, what's this guy done? He's created these extraordinary things. He's now planning humanoid robots to take away a lot of the drudgery of our lives. He wants to colonize Mars because he thinks that one day we're going to need another planet. He's probably right about that. He's got a massive brain. He's got all this cash. And rather than sit there and kind of do what you think he's doing, which is just, all right, I need to spend billions on making myself even richer, he's gone to work for the government for free as an unelected guy just trying to stop the ridiculous overspend of the government. And in the process, he's employing several 100,000 people in America, and he's a South African immigrant to America, right? It's hard to think of a more positive story, and yet by your criteria, you would say, well, sorry, but I'm not going to put words in your mouth, and I don't want to miscategorize you, but to sort of portray him as one of the bad guys, I think is probably very unfair.
I ain't here to call. I ain't never met Elon Musk.
Yeah.
I ain't never met the guy. He could be a nice. Have you met him?
I met him once last year for
Well,
a
look,
couple of
if
hours.
he wants to copy my book, I'll sign one for him. We can send it over, right? Look, listen. I'm not here to attack Elon Musk.
No, but you know my point.
I'm here to
He
protect.
can afford a copy.
I'm
He'll
here
buy
to
it.
protect my people's ability to feed and house their children, and they're losing that.
Right.
They're losing that. And listen,
But why is that Elon
we are
Musk's
not-
fault? Because he's
I didn't say
employing
anything Elon
hundreds
Musk's
of
fault.
thousands of
This
people.
is because wealth inequality is rapidly increasing, and wealth is being sucked out
I
of the
hear
middle
you,
class.
but
and-
why is, but what can he do about it?
Listen, I don't expect Elon Musk to do anything. I'm not here to talk to Elon Musk. I'm here to talk to the American public and to tell them I get paid millions of pounds a year to watch your class.
So what's
and
the
bet on
answer?
your class
Give me
destroyed.
your answer. If you're now,
It can only
So
be
do you-
taxed.
let me
It
make
can
you-
only be
let me
taxed.
make
Do
you
you
the
have a problem
treasurer.
with any
Yeah.
of the things that Donald Trump's doing as per the economy, or anything that we've seen in the last month?
I don't think that
he's-
they're going to work. I don't think because I am somebody who has made millions of pounds betting that growing inequality will reduce living standards, and he's cutting taxes on the rich. Listen, let me ask you a question, right? You've already accepted if we massively increase inequality, that can decrease living standards. If we massively decrease tax on the rich, people who make passive income of $100, $200 million a year, do you think that will affect living standards of the middle class?
I don't know.
If they
I
increase
don't
their
know.
ownership
It's
of
not-
wealth, if they increase their consumption of goods and services, where does it fucking come from? Listen, we have sat here in the last 5 years. We've watched the biggest ever increase in millionaire and billionaire wealth in the history of this planet, immediately followed by a collapse in living standards of the middle class, a complete collapse in the ability of ordinary people to own assets, and nobody's drawing the
But
connection.
Gary, let me
again,
ask you a hard
that's-
question. Can you point to a country
Yeah.
in the last century where socialism has worked?
I will point to a country where taxing the rich at a fair rate led to good living standards for working people, United States, 1955.
Dave?
Well, I would say again, in light of the fraud and criminal negligence that has been exposed, that is being exposed literally this second as we are recording this, the idea that we would be going in right now and saying to certain people, you should give the government more money and the government will be a good steward of those dollars, I think is completely ridiculous.
And we can probably all agree about the waste, right? I mean, that's a given. But
sure, but
the principle of what Gary's talking about.
I am for everyone keeping as much of their hard-earned money as possible. Piers, my guess is you have more money than me. I don't deserve your money, and I can't have it.
I sincerely hope I do, and no, you don't.
Exactly. And I don't deserve your money either.
Let me ask you a difficult question.
But I don't understand.
Let me ask you a difficult question.
Billionaires pay nothing.
No,
they pay all sorts of taxes.
I've got a difficult question, which is, there are a lot of people watching this agreeing, and obviously people disagreeing as well, but two questions. How much money have you made in your life?
Yeah.
And how much have you given away?
I'll give you an excellent answer to that. If you want to know how much money I've made in my life, it is exactly there in my book, The Trading Game.
We'll go
right here today. And you'll see it's exactly
how much is it?
You've got to read the book.
Well, I've got time to read it right now.
You not read the book?
No.
Well,
my son's had it.
Afterwards,
my son's rave about it. Yeah,
but, listen, I made a lot of money, enough to quit my YouTube channel.
How much? Just give it to me straight.
Enough,
in the book, tell me.
Enough to quit, run a YouTube channel and have a family. That's enough.
30 million, 50 million?
Listen, do you have a spreadsheet? Do you have a spreadsheet?
No.
I don't have a fucking spreadsheet. All I know is it's enough. I can go to Nando's.
You said you put it in the book, though, how much it is.
Yeah, but I didn't add it all up. You read the book and add it up.
Well, how much is it?
I don't fucking know. Listen.
What, 10, 50, 100 million?
It's enough for me to live for the rest of my life.
I'm not trying to trap you.
No, it's the 10, 50, 100 million. It's enough. Enough for an ordinary person to live the rest of their life.
How much is that?
Family. The number I had in my head when I went into banking, was £2 million.
2 million?
And it was enough. For me, that's enough.
You've made more than 2 million. You were Citibank's top guy.
I don't add this stuff up. For me, it's enough. I've got enough money. I've got enough to do the work that I do.
Do you give a
to
little
tell
bit away?
Ordinary people.
Do you redistribute your own wealth?
That is the money that funds my YouTube channel. Listen.
Well, do you
tell me this now, right?
When you sell a book, do you keep the money for the book?
If I give the money away, who does the fucking YouTube channel, Piers? Who pays you?
I'm not accusing you. I'm just asking you.
Listen.
Do you give any money away?
Who pays you?
No, but
who pays you?
No, but Gary,
listen, you and I both know there's two ways to
The reason I'm asking you is only because your position is that there should be more redistribution to poorer people from the rich, right? And you're a rich guy who's made millions, won't say exactly how many millions. I'll work it out when I read the book.
The viewers should also work out by reading the book.
Fuck your book at this point.
I don't think it's unfair. I don't think it's unfair to ask you.
Of course, I want people
to ask you how much you've given away.
Listen, this is the money. Who's going to pay for my kids?
What percentage?
I've quit my job to run a YouTube channel. That's the money that's going to send my kids to school, Piers. That's the money.
But that does sound quite selfish.
Look, I've told you before, I'm not Mahatma Gandhi. I never pretended to be a good person. I was the best trader in the fucking world, one of the biggest banks in the world, and I made that money by betting the American middle class would be destroyed.
I get it.
I ain't here to be Mahatma Gandhi. I ain't Nelson Mandela like you, boss. I'm here to tell the American public what's happening.
But do you think you practice what you're preaching?
What I preach is to raise taxes and reduce the growing inequality. That's what I preach. Listen, I ain't here telling people. I didn't tell you to give your money away. I didn't tell you to give your money away.
You want the power, but you are, because you want the power of the state, which has the guns, to say to Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and Mark Zuckerberg, we're going to take your money. We're just going to pick a number and decide how much to take. Do you give more than 1% of your money to charity?
I want the state.
You can voluntarily
ordinary
do
people
it.
from the rich.
But do you do any of that yourself?
Listen, I'm not here to tell anybody to give their money away. I'm here to tell people how to protect their class.
101. I mean, this is what the left
All right,
is.
listen.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm not greedy. Everyone else is. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Yet another hypocritical socialist grifter. Now, I don't really know about Gary claiming to be a socialist or not, but he sure acts like it. With that, I think it's time to present a sample of some background digging on this man. What I'm about to read to you is an article posted by someone who knew Gary. The link to the article is in the descriptions. I worked with Gary Stevenson, the ex-Citigroup trader, YouTube anti-inequality campaigner and author who claims he was the best trader in the world and who spends his time campaigning for wealth tax. Like many of Gary's older former colleagues, I don't recognize the world he portrays in his book. Gary was very much loved at Citigroup. He describes us collectively as dysfunctional math geniuses, overfed public schoolboys and borderline psychopaths. But that's disingenuous. I was there and that's not how it was. Gary joined Citi when he was only 21. He was very charismatic and had an amazing story. He was a kid who was intelligent, bright-eyed and who worked hard and was very likable. A lot of us felt very fatherly towards him. We knew he'd had a challenging upbringing, and we mentored him. He was always referred to as a good kid. Over time, though, Gary changed. He's complex and complicated, and he has a chip on his shoulder about private school educated people, even though not all of us on the desk were like that. The money changed Gary. When he first got a big bonus, he was surprised, but a year or so later, I can remember him going around saying, "If I don't get 1 million at the end of this year, I'm fucking out of this place." Gary was a good trader, but he wasn't the best, nor was he one of the biggest traders in the world. He was a guy sitting on making big decisions, but we all were. To be the biggest and best trader in the world, you'd have to be looking across equities, commodities, and credit. Gary might have been the biggest trader at Citi in London for a while, but that's about it. To be the best trader, you need to make consistent money over long periods of time. But Gary didn't do it for long enough. He was well supported and guided, and he made good money when everyone else made good money. The world was going down the pan, and Gary jumped on it like everyone else. Gary makes everyone he worked with at Citi seem immoral. In fact, a lot of us have sympathy for his calls for a wealth tax, but we question how it could be implemented and whether the banking industry is the main problem. He never mentions that 50% of everything you earn in banking today goes to the government in tax. I'm grateful for my time in banking, but Gary seems very bitter. It's hurtful to those of us who try to help him. Some things are left out of the book. For example, Gary doesn't say much about our boss, who was one of the most impressive human beings I've met in my life. He is intelligent, honest, fair and compassionate, and has emotional intelligence beyond his years, but there's no mention of that. The trading floor has an intense effect on people, and you don't know what it will be in until you're in it. Gary's descriptions in the book of losing weight, ending relationships, and living in an apartment with no furniture and little sleep suggests he was becoming unraveled, both mentally and physically. From the perspective of those of us on the desk with him, this unraveling started when Citi wouldn't let Gary leave with his bonuses. Everyone in banking knows that you have to wait 3 years before bonuses fully vest, and that bonuses are withheld because they want to hold on to you. It's in your contract, and Citi has to uphold it because the bank doesn't want to make exceptions to the rule. Gary implies that once you are in, it's impossible to leave. That's not true. He could have left at any time, but that meant leaving the money. Gary couldn't accept that. He is not good at accepting authority and wants things his way. When he wasn't allowed to leave with his bonuses, he refused to work and his mental and physical health visibly deteriorated. Gary, however, says he won because Citi gave him his deferred stock and let him leave early. That's not my take. Citi acted out of compassion and gave a young man his money before his physical and mental health got worse. I believe that our boss went upstairs and asked for Gary to be allowed to leave. He was concerned about Gary's health. And of course, Gary was of no use to the bank if he is not making money trading. That's the nature of the Citi. I wish Gary well, but I also want him to think about the way he's sensationalized his story and burned a lot of people who tried to help him. Reading his book, I'm left with a lot of questions. Did he learn anything about himself from his time at the bank? Does he have cautionary messages for other aspiring traders? Where is his gratitude for the people and institution that nurtured him and gave him an opportunity for wealth, and the choices that come with that wealth? Is there any reflection and introspection? I'm not so sure that there is. It truly is fascinating how people like Gary are able to not only lift themselves out of poverty, but also become multimillionaires, despite claiming the system is rigged against people like him. However, it is foolish to think that someone who can so openly and brazenly showcase their hypocrisy are stupid and don't know what they're doing. The real fools are the ones who cannot see the simple truth, trying to defend such hypocrisy simply because the person in question is moving their lips, pandering to their own worldview. A worldview which is more often than not about doom and gloom, throwing and investing their own money into ideas which will forever remain as such, ideas. In the end, all of it will just stay in their own heads, with absolutely no use nor substance outside of it. Another way to put it, it doesn't matter how many books you read, unless you are able to take your time comprehending and analyzing the material presented to you, word for word. and to evaluate whether or not they hold a candle to the current reality of the world, not the reality which merely exists in their heads. In a way, Gary Stevenson reminds me of Aaron Hansen and his die-hard fanbase.